Hi everybody, welcome to the second Geography Geek free masterclass for A Senior NEA. Last session we were looking at creating a title, and I had a little bit of feedback from people following that session, so thanks for that. It's really good to see some of the titles that you're coming up with, and the advice that I've been giving people is to make sure that title gives you enough to be able to talk about. It doesn't need to be too big. You're not going to do, the whole city of Birmingham. It's just too much. Keep it quite short, keep it to the point, but give something where you can explain. So to what extent questions are often quite good. In today's session, we are going to be having a look at the layout for your coursework. And what we've got to remember is this is an A-level piece of work. So you're aiming for good academic standards. And there's a few things that you need to do. The first thing that you need to do is make sure that you put page numbers on. Now, this might seem really obvious, but a lot of people forget to do it. And if you haven't got page numbers, it makes the marking of the NEA really difficult. Why would you want to make it more difficult for the examiner to mark your work? So get page numbers on there. Now I'm going to show you how to do these things as well today. So let me just flip now to find a Word document. So here on the Word document, in order to put page numbers in, we would basically go into Insert, and then you can see here there's a button that says Page Numbers. And usually you would put them towards the bottom of the page, but it doesn't really matter too much. The second thing on my list there is line spacing. And what line spacing does, it spaces out, it puts gaps between the writing in your work. And again, it's really good for academic writing, and it's easier for people to mark it as well. So it's just good practice. Again, I'm going to show you how to do this. In order to get 1.5 line spacing, which is what you want, you would go to the Home tab, and then there's this little button here. If you click on there and click 1.5, it means that when you type something and then you press enter and you type something else, you can see that there's quite a big gap there between the two lines, and that's what you're aiming for. The other thing to come on to is headings. You've got to have really clear headings. So when you start a section, have a heading for that section and make the headings look the same, so that the person that's reading it knows where the introduction starts and knows where the method starts. And it's really easy to navigate. And the other thing is referencing. So referencing, if you find some information and it is not yours, you have to say where you've had it from. And referencing is pretty straightforward. But again, I'm just going to give you a little idea about how to do that. So this is an article that it's got nothing to do with the NEA, but it's an article where I have done some referencing to give you an idea about how you do it. And as you can see on this document, you've got these little numbers that appear every now and again. Whenever I put a fact in, so here I've referenced a Guardian newspaper article and I put a little 1 in there. And then here I've given a quote and I've put a little 2 in there. Now, the way that you put those in is, let's say this one here where I've put the cursor is, let's say that's a fact that I want to reference. We would go into references in the toolbar and you would click on either insert endnote or insert footnote. The difference between the two is endnote would put all your references right at the end, and footnote will put them at the bottom of every page. It doesn't matter which you use as long as you're consistent. I tend to use endnotes because sometimes if you have a lot of references, it kind of makes your page look a bit messy. So if I were to click insert endnote here, it puts a number in and it takes me down to the bottom. So these are all my references at the bottom. And as you can see, these are all the places where I found this information. There are some Harvard reference tool generators that you can use online to help you to put together a Harvard reference, but you can see there's a certain way of writing out a reference. So when you've got your document, then you've got lots and lots of little numbers in amongst it, and those numbers all relate to a piece of information to show where you've got that information from. The last couple of things to say, which are not written on there, are a few things about things like figures. So every image, every map, every table should have what's called a figure number. And those figure numbers should run throughout the whole document. So you'd start with your introduction, you'd have figure 1, figure 2. If you then get to your methodology, it might be that you've moved on to figure 3, so they should all follow. And if you want, you can have figures, maps, and tables if you want to split it down. So you've got to make sure that you've got that level of organisation, and it means that when you're writing your piece of work, you can refer to the right figure number. And another thing that's preferable for an academic piece of writing is that you don't write in the first person. At A level, it's probably not as important as if you were to go on to do a degree, but it is just good practice. So rather than saying, I went to Bristol, you could say this study was carried out in Bristol. So you try to kind of remove it from yourself as a first person. So there we are. That's how you start your layout. Next week, we are going to move on and we are going to start looking at how you write an introduction, including a literature review. So hopefully I will see you then.